Good afternoon. I am Michael Popa, Executive Director of the Mainstream Coalition, and thank you for joining us for Mainstream Live, a series of conversations with figures in Kansas politics, advocacy, and community building. Today, we'll hear from grassroots activists who were each called to action in their own communities. Please help me welcome today Ms. Amber Sellers of Sigma Gamma Rho, Ms. Erin Woods, founder of 6 Degrees of Activism, and Ms. Nikki McDonald, community organizer. Hi, friends.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Hey.
Of course. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. So let's start. And you're all grassroots organizers, activists, advocates, and you were all spurred into action for one reason or another. So Amber, could you tell us a little bit about your sorority, your organization, and then we'll go down the line and what spurred you into action?
Sure. Thanks for having me again today, and I'm really excited about being here. I've been a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, which is one of 9 historical African-American Greek-letter organizations in the United States and well as internationally. And so I've been in my organization for almost 20 years. And at the core of our mission is to enhance the quality of life of women and children socially, educationally, and civically. So civic engagement is the foundation of our organization, and it's built upon in our motto, greater service, greater progress. So the greater service I am to my community, the greater it progresses. And so knowing that that's instilled in our mission, I became more and more intentional about my civic engagement and my civic activism probably 6 years ago, and just continue to build upon it, asking the difficult questions and asking the questions that I didn't know were questions, to remove a little bit of the barrier and fear that I had about trying to learn everything, but not knowing anything. And so that was intimidating to me, but I realized, as one would eat an elephant, you have to do it one bite at a time. And so I did that. I took what information I could get at the grasp of my hands and learned there, and then continue to engage others in order to build my own educational knowledge. And then as a member of the organization, share that with my sisters and my sorors, but also making sure that I push that information out to my community. So the sorority has been very instrumental in giving me a platform to do that, but I did have to roll my sleeves up and do the work itself, but it is ingrained in our organization.
Excellent. Thank you. And Erin, 6 Degrees is relatively new.
Yes.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about that and what made you want to start that organization.
Basically, I think probably started a little bit back in 2017, early when they were trying to get rid of healthcare, was sort of where I started my activism, I guess, which I wouldn't even have known that was what it was. But anyways, through that, I was reaching out to people and kind of letting them know what was going on as Affordable Care Act was looking like it was going to be repealed. Figured there might be people out there who wanted to do something but didn't know what to do. So I started just sending some emails to people who I thought, might want to know more. And I kind of had to learn a lot. I like what Amber said. A lot of it is like, we don't know everything. And it's just kind of having that interest in digging in and learning about the issues yourself. And then figuring a lot of people don't have that time or maybe as much of an interest. So I just started sending emails to people and kind of said, to call their congressperson. I realized that prior to that, I had never made a call to my congressperson. I would, think, who do I call? I don't even know their phone number. What would I say? So, I made my first one, was nervous. And then I thought, I bet other people are just like me. So I just started sharing the information and saying, here's who to call. Here's their phone number. Here's how to find their phone number. Here's an example of what to say, just to make it as easy as possible for people to get engaged. So that's kind of where it all started. And in the back of my head, at some point, I started thinking about this whole 6 degrees of activism, because it would be like somebody might share my email with their friend and say, can you please add them to the list? And so this year, knowing that 2020 was going to be a very important election, and not only for me, not only at the federal level, but I also over these years have learned a lot about the state level elections and how important the people we put in those roles are. So that's kind of a big focus of it this year. So it's just basically, I started in early January, kind of talked to some people that I knew might want to get engaged, pulled them together. And again, they've pulled some of their friends in. And currently we're just kind of, I reach out to candidates and see how can we help you, and kind of then put out volunteer opportunities for people. So.
Excellent. Congratulations on the startup organization.
Thank you.
Of course. And Nikki, you are everywhere, right? You're doing a lot of things in the community. You're not representing just one organization today. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I want to give some props to Mainstream Coalition. Prior to the 2016 election, I did pay attention, but my primary source of information in educating myself about candidates and issues was Mainstream Coalition. So I like their middle of the road approach. I feel like that resonates with most real Kansans. And in my experience the last few years, I've learned that the loudest voices are really the most extreme on both sides. So prior to the 2016 election, I am a former teacher, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I'm the mother of a son with some special needs. So I brought some things to the community that other people might not. Prior to the 2016 election, I served as a state-appointed education advocate for some foster students in Shawnee Mission. And I just could see how we've fleeced public schools in Kansas especially. And there's a very coordinated attack against public schools. So I've gotten involved with Game On for Public School, or Game On for Kansas Schools. I've gotten some friendships with other education advocates in neighboring school districts like Stand Up Blue Valley and Education First, Shawnee Mission. And I felt compelled to start a group in Olathe called Olathe Public Education Network. We're not a watchdog sort of group. We really look at Topeka, and we try to make sure that the voice of parents and students in Olathe is heard, because the representation that the elected officials that we send to Topeka tend to skew to be more extremist. Not everyone, but several. So that has kind of led me to kind of weigh, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and I'm good at a couple things. I'm good at networking, and I'm good at firing people up, and I'm good at plugging people in. And I have found that many people want to help. A lot of people are outraged right now. A lot of people don't feel heard or represented, and they just need someone to connect the dots. Erin's group has helped us with some postcards recently. I've been running a campaign for my house district for a friend who's running, and it's nice to find ways to give people to help. And my goal is just to move the needle, to be a good listener, to learn to be a better ally, and to help others whose voices are silenced have a voice.
Thanks, Nikki. And I think that's all of our goals as advocates or activists, at least it should be, right? To give a voice to others. It's one of our primary goals. So what do you think was the hardest thing, or what was the hardest thing for you, anyone, this goes out to everyone, starting up your organization or starting in advocacy, in activism? Were there any roadblocks? Were there any stumbles other than fear and not really knowing what you're doing?
I'm at a bit of an advantage over some people because I have a lot of time. And I also have decided not to go back into teaching. So it's okay sometimes if I ruffle feathers. It has been a learning experience to me to figure out how to dabble in politics, because I really dislike politics. But if you want to impact policy, you have to dabble in politics. So I would say sometimes it's a little hard to understand the intricacies of how to make change without offending people and shutting doors. So I try pretty hard to make friends with people who don't always agree with me. and try to have a space for civil conversation. Sometimes I'm more successful at that than others, but civility is sometimes a challenge.
That's a really good point. And I think maybe not a lot of people have heard that before or realize going into something like this. Amber, Erin?
Yeah, I was going to say, for me, I feel like most of my roadblocks have been myself. This is not so. When you said accept fear, I'm like, well, shoot. That's
No, go ahead.
No,
Talk about it.
I think for me, I've always been that person who's kind of the behind the scenes helper and never thought of myself as like the leader or an organizer. So, and then just also, there's a lot of uncomfortableness of like putting yourself out there. Like when I would start sending those emails, I'm like, what are people thinking of me? And I think there's a little bit of that. I don't want to be seen as political, but like Nikki said, if you want to make change, there's just no other way than to try to impact legislation and get other people involved. So for me, I would say that's just been the biggest roadblock for me. Is often, even now that I've gotten so much further into it, I might send out some volunteer request or something and get crickets, or I don't know. And I get all nervous that it's, what am I doing? And anyways, but then you get like a bunch of people volunteering, or, and then it's all good. And you realize that getting people to collectively take action is really what needs to be done. So you just keep plugging along. So.
Excellent. Amber, any?
I would say mostly maybe the feeling of being overwhelmed, that there's so much that needs to be done, that can be done, that someone coming in may feel like, where do I start? How do I do this? And so you attempt to take on so much that you lose sight of what it was that initially brought you to the table. And so with sharing with the organization, I just recently came off a 10-year of serving as the social action chair for the region of my sorority, which covers 13 states. And so one of the things that I always spoke with members about is there's so much of this work that needs to be done. If you focus on that, you're going to feel defeated. You're going to feel burnt out before you even start. So the idea is that you need to figure out, where do you want your voice to be heard? Is it in policy? Is it in regulations? Is it in statute? Is it in behavior changes? Is it in programs? Is it in educating? Find, based on what you know about yourself, where you want your voice to be heard, and then it kind of build from there. But that getting over that feeling of being overwhelmed with, there's so much that needs to be done, and that you're not going to be the only one doing it, but equipping yourself with the tools that you need to do the part that you're excited about well, and finding others and building that grassroots so that we can all do it collectively together to really move that needle that Nikki talked about. That's what it's about. And so that took about a year for me to get over the sense of overwhelmingness, because I wanted to do everything. I wanted to call, I wanted to write, I wanted to be able to draft legislation and talk with, be in the room where the sausage is being made and all. And I just felt like I can do all of this, but that may not be where I need to be. And that's not where my strengths should be leading me. And so I've come to terms with where I'm successful at and where my strengths make me successful in regards to being engaged and wanting to see change come about. And so that's one of the things that one has to resolve themselves to, is knowing that there's so much that needs to be done, but find what speaks to you, focus on that. And as you do that and you build and you bring people on, then you start to create the pieces of the puzzle come together, and then you have that coalition you need to get the job done.
I love what Amber said just now about, there's no shortage of outrage, and you've got to pick a thing and do that thing. One way I've found to be successful, to bring people along to do the thing I want to do, is to show up for them and their cause. So if I hear about a rally, maybe for some, not my top 10 issue, but it's a cause I believe in, or for the Black Lives Matter movement, for instance, it's not something that's impacted me a lot, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be moved to action. It's one thing to be passively accepting of a notion, and it's another thing to move forward in your own personal activism, to be moved to action, to be moved to listen. And so if we show up for each other and our causes, we're stronger as a collective whole.
You both mentioned, oh, sorry, Amber, please.
No, I was just going to say it speaks volume to power and authority. You know, they're not synonymous with each other. The power is in the collective. Authority is just one piece. So if you understand what power is and what the power of coalitioning together and can do, then those who are in authority, they then realize that they are not the one that's truly in control. So understanding what power and authority is, and knowing who wields the power and who truly has the authority. So
absolutely. And one other thing that came to mind when Amber was talking, I think a lot of times it's hard for me as a community leader to reel people in to focus on what's happening here in the city or in my neighborhood. The national politics are sexier. It's much more fun to get riled up about what the latest drama is in Washington. But at the end of the day, we have a lot more power individually to make an impact in our own cities.
exactly.
Or in our own state legislatures. So while it's might not be as fun to campaign for a city council race, it really does impact your day-to-day life a lot more at the municipal or state level than the national level. Plus, these are smaller pieces we can bite off, and we can actually see the fruits of our labor more quickly if we do this on a local level.
Very true. I just want to echo that. You see your city council member or your commissioner at the grocery store, right? They might live right next door to you. Same with your state reps or senators. That's where real change happens at the local level, because most of those people, I don't want to say most of those people, some of those people are being groomed for higher office, right? So we want to elect people that share our values and vision at the local level, so that we can, you know, for lack of better terminology, again, have them groomed for higher office.
And it's also
You both mentioned.
I would just say it's also important for us to teach other people how to go about this civic engagement. I never knew before a year or two ago that I could actually write a letter to a committee who's considering, for instance, a bill. I went and testified face-to-face in the insurance committee a couple of years ago in Topeka, because they were proposing having guns in our schools, which is something I think is unthinkable. So nobody told me I couldn't. So I just signed up and got on the list. And before I knew it, I was in this room with a lot of people and news cameras. But I think I helped move the needle that day. And I spoke up for parents and teachers and administrators who maybe weren't comfortable going and saying those things in that space, or maybe they were busy at work. Maybe they didn't even realize it was happening. So if you can find out how to contact your city councilman, or write testimony, written testimony, or go face-to-face and testify, those things matter. A lot of these people pass budgets and bills behind closed doors, and it's because we as a society tend to be lazy, and we just trust that it'll be okay. And I used to think probably politicians were smarter than me or whatever. I have found that not to be the case. I think that it's important that we engage in dialogue, or else we have no reason, no excuse to complain when things are frustrating to us. If you're not a part of the solution, then you don't get to talk about the problem.
I'm going to push back a little bit on what you said about people being lazy, because to a certain extent, I do agree. And then I have a question for Erin. To a certain extent, I do agree, but I think it's, in some cases, less being lazy and more being overwhelmed, like Amber was saying, and uninformed, because you don't know where to get the information. And if no one tells you, right, you're not going to know. So that's where that civic engagement comes in on the personal level.
That's my frustration. I just sat and watched our county commission meeting about whether or not we should be mandating masks. And I pay attention to our county commission meeting every week. And I speak there sometimes when I have something to say. But the people who've come out of the woodwork, I've never seen them engaging before. And I celebrate that they've found the way to do that. But I just wonder sometimes, should it take drama and crisis for you to speak up? I hope not. I hope that we can speak up before we everything comes to such a head where there's such heightened emotion. But
Well, and for anyone that watched that, that was a show.
it wasn't, but often the meetings are about sewers and wastewater,
Right.
and that's not as fun to listen to.
It's not sexy at all.
Expensive, and it's key to a civilized society. So,
Well, I think
So,
that we missed
oh.
out about, real quick, just to add to that, so not to get us off track. I
Mm.
think one of the things that we miss out is, even when we talk about national politics being sexy, well, even the city council and commissioner meetings are the sexy part of it. Everyone's like, oh, we have to go here to go to these meetings. But most counties and most cities have community police review board committees. They have human rights committees. There's other commissions and committees that are tasked to do some of the work that those recommendations go up to your commissioners and city council people to then make decisions. And so if you're not where, yes, those meetings are important, but it is just as important to go to those strategic planning commission meetings, the street planning committees, the human rights commission meetings, because those are individuals who were appointed to serve in those capacities. So even more, you are keeping tabs on your local elected officials, but you're also being accountable to your fellow neighbors, your fellow citizens, residents, to keep them accountable to ensuring that they're doing the work as well. So I see that, we talk about the sense of overwhelming and are folks lazy, or, what drives them to come out? I don't know. But what I do know is that there's a lot of people who aren't coming out, who would more than likely come out if it wasn't for the politics of governance and the proverbial checking of a box that says, well, we notified someone. Because of the situation we're in right now with COVID, we're things are done more technology based, So how many people are impacted by things that don't have access to technology? But the first thing we say is, well, because of this, there's so much to be said about what causes people to be engaged and what drives them to do it. And like Nikki said, I'm excited that folks are wanting to be engaged, but at the same time, we also need to keep our elected officials accountable to what are they doing to ensure that people are engaged. And we don't.
Right. And you both mentioned, Amber and Nikki, you both mentioned that we want people to be more engaged, but they don't know where to find information. And Erin, that's exactly what you're doing, right? I mean, you're doing it mostly on the state level, but you're providing people with information they might not be able to go out and get for themselves.
Yeah, I think that I figured out, as Nikki said, I know that I have more time to do that. I've been home with my kids, and now I've kind of found this interest. And so, I dig into a lot of things, whether it's paying attention to Mainstream Coalition, which I really value your guys' work, or I've now met people through getting involved that I rely upon, like, Judith Dede, who you had on, had a conversation with one day with Game On for Kansas Schools. She knows so much about education in Topeka and everything that's happened over the years. So, I learn a lot from other people, and then I just try to share it. So I try to share it too when issues come up at the state level, as Nikki mentioned, with one of them that I had done in the past was when, they were trying to let guns be in schools or on college campuses at the time. And so I just, reached out to people. I share articles with them, kind of give my own little synopsis, and then again, let them know what they can do and how to do it. Same with these. I know I have a lot of people. I know there's a lot of people that are busy and would like to get involved. So just by me having the time to reach out to these candidates and say, how can we help? Do you need postcards? Do you need people to make phone calls? We've dropped literature for people. We have a couple of people are now doing data entry for a candidate. So there's just all sorts of things out there, but it is trying to, as Nikki said as well, connecting the dots. That's a great way to put it, so that we can help get people involved. But I think it can be difficult sometimes to know what to do.
So what would you say are and this is a question from the Facebook chat, what would you say are some first steps that people can take to learn how to advocate for a particular issue?
Sign up for the Mainstream Coalition email. That's
I'll pay you later.
you know, it's
Erin.
not meant to be a
I'll
plug.
pay you your cut later. Yeah. No, thank you very much.
I value your information a lot. Would be one of my, that'd be a first step.
Kind of along with what Erin said, you know, there are organizations that probably already exist for any given topic. So I'm careful to try to not reinvent something that already exists. You can utilize these local groups or local chapters of groups. For instance, if common sense gun reform is your thing, there's a Moms Demand Action group. There's a grandparents, I think it's Grandparents Against Gun Violence or something. There are several groups where you could tap into, and a lot of them meet virtually or monthly. Find ways you can plug into infrastructure that's already there, and do some reading. Educate yourself first so that you can ask educated questions when you're in the room where it happens. Those are my two suggestions. And then maybe find a buddy who's interested in the same thing. You could go do it together, because sometimes it's very intimidating to show up to something by yourself. Sometimes these meetings are small. So just have a little bit of faith and be willing to step outside of your comfort zone.
That's a great point, the buddy system.
Yeah, I'd echo
Thank you
that.
for mentioning that.
I think that's a lot of how I started. Like when I would want to attend something, I would check with some friends. I had a couple of friends that were my go-tos, and so we'd go, and that would help. And then, eventually there was a day when nobody could go, and I was like, okay, I'll just go on my own, and but it helps. And
Amber, you have a built-in buddy system, don't you? In the sorority?
We do, and I think most importantly, it's how do we build outside of that? Because I don't, with the sorority, our goal is to use our collective knowledge and talents and strengths to not tell the community what it needs to do, but help the community find its voice and do that. And so a lot of what Erin and what Nikki said, with advocacy and as what you would do with allyship, it starts with, you got to educate yourself. So, you're advocating for something. Why are you advocating for it? I heard someone several years ago told the story of caring and believing. And the idea is that we care about a lot of things. I care about a lot of things. I care about climate change. I care about recycling. I care about being able to work from home and work full time. I care about a lot of things. But sometimes that doesn't rise to the occasion of me believing in something. And so we can care about a lot of things. And there are things you can do when you care. You can donate, you can volunteer your time. Advocacy gets into the realm of believing in something where you're willing to give of yourself and to be vulnerable in order to see something come to fruition. And so that by doing that, you have to give yourself some time, that space to educate yourself, to know, to learn, the history of that event, to understand the policy side of it, the politics side of it, the history of where the issue has come with that particular, with whatever it is that you're wanting to advocate for and what it is that you want to see happen. And so once you've educated yourself, then you start to engage those who have been involved in it so that you can take the temperature of the work that's been done. So then you can figure out where it is that you fall in line. And so I share that, and that's when I share with members in the organization, when they're going about and they're wanting to do something, whether it's addressing community policing or human trafficking or maternal and child health issues, educate yourself. And once you've educated yourself, like you said, reach out to those groups and reach out to groups that you're not familiar with. You don't hear a lot about the ideas that as being a historical Black sorority, we may focus on issues that impact the Black community, but a lot of the issues that impact the Black community, I don't want to say it, sometimes some of the byproduct of it is that you're benefiting the entire community as a whole. So it makes
Well, our
sense.
issues are all entwined.
Yes,
right?
always. And so it makes sense that when we're doing this work, we don't want to do it in silos. So, you know, as much as we work with the NAACP, we work with the League of Women Voters. We work with other nonpartisan groups because that's what we're built on, but also because we don't exist in a vacuum. And so, you know, it starts to blossom. You know, that advocacy work, it starts to blossom, but you know, like I think we've all said it, it's education. You have to be comfortable in what it is you believe in, and that's how you're able to discern if that's something I want to take on. Is that, do I really believe in this to the point that I'm willing to go all by myself or go with a buddy to advocate for something? Am I willing to make that phone call? Am I willing to stop my elected official in the grocery store and say, you know what, I'm not a big fan of you, but I do want to take some time to tell you about this particular bill that is you're probably going to vote on, and I just want to share my concerns about it. You know,
I gotta tell you, there are more people out there that are comfortable with that than you think.
I believe it.
and that's for everyone out there. Don't think that you're alone. If you want to go up to your elected and you want to say something, you want to ask a question, you're not the first, right? There are many people out there that do. So feel comfortable doing it. But how do you stay motivated then to continue doing it? And we have time for this one last question, and it's from the chat again. And then I'll ask, if you don't mind, if you could go back through the chat and answer any questions that we maybe didn't have a chance to get to. I'm sure people would love to hear from you. But how do you stay motivated to keep going? Amber, I cut you off, so let's start with you.
You want to start with me? I ask myself that question every day. I think not doing something is what keeps me motivated. I had a sorority sister who said something to me to the effects of community engagement is transformation. And I can't demand or even ask for, to me, it's like breathing. You know, I've lived a life because of being a woman, being a Black woman, living in areas where I wasn't accepted, whatever it is, my journey has got me to a point where complacency is not an option for me. And it's never been an option. And not even looking at it from the idea of being a civic activist, just in my life and living. So what motivates me is knowing that me doing something and using my talents to move, to create a behavior change, a foundation change, a systemic change, no matter what it is or however it comes about. If I can do it, and I know I have the ability to do it, and I know that there is an opportunity to build a coalition to do it, I have to. I mean, that's just how I'm built, whether it's Black girl magic or just, you know, just my DNA or how my strengths come together to create who I am. I don't know any other way to put it. It's just, like I said, complacency is not an option for me, and it's never been. So what motivates me is knowing.
That sums it up, right? Complacency is not an option.
Complacency is not an option.
Nikki, what motivates you?
Well,
to keep going?
First of all, I want to say that self-care is really important. And there are plenty of times that I check out and I watch mindless Netflix, and I play Skyrim on my Nintendo Switch. And, you know, I cut out time for me and for my family. But I think I want to make one distinction. There's a difference between advocacy and activism. I think prior to 2016, I was more of an advocate. And there are times now, more times than not, that I feel moved to action. I have found ways that I can, through my actions or inspiring others with their actions, we're kind of moved to activism in some regards. But your original question, how do I keep going? I have 2 sons, And I need to be able to sleep at night. And so someday they're going to ask me, what was it like to live back then? And I want them to have memories of me stepping up and being the change that I want to see. It's enough to just, it's overwhelming enough that you might want to check out. And I have a lot of friends who do that. And I respect their decision-making ability there, but it's not in me to sit quietly. After the 2016 election, I found a lot of my friends were drinking too much in their pajamas for weeks on end. And I moved through those stages of grief a little more quickly. I feel like you need to make a plan and execute it. I have one sister who, when she wants to hear someone say, I'm sorry, that sucks, she calls my other sister. But when she's ready for a plan, she calls me. And so that's just kind of, I'm a lot like Amber in that regard. I think it's important to live with integrity and to be the change you want to see.
Thank you. Erin, what keeps you motivated to keep going?
Probably some of that same stuff. I feel like anytime, if I see a situation, and these days, I'm not sure I was always like that, but, and I don't like it. And I try to think of, now I try to turn it around and say, well, what can I do about it? And it may be a small thing that I can do, but I kind of try to do that. And as far as like the work I'm doing now, and I do get discouraged sometimes because I think it can be overwhelming. When to me, I look at the number of state campaigns right here in Johnson County that are incredibly important. We just have a very unbalanced legislature right now. So I like to see that change. So I do get overwhelmed, but then I feel like every time I kind of take that action step, I kind of think, okay, I'm going to write a postcard, or I'm going to most of these campaigns have phone banking going on almost any time of the day. You could pick up the phone. So, maybe it's just like, okay, I'll make a couple phone calls. And that is a very scary thing, by the way. Like a lot of people, that is one thing they do not, that they just shy away from making phone calls, of all the activities that I have for people that they can do. But it's really surprising how, especially right now, I think a lot of the campaigns are calling very strong supporters. So I end up having some really good conversations, and those kind of spur me along, or just basically taking an action step makes me keep going, because you feel good about it. You feel like you've done something. So, and
thank you. Oh, go ahead, please.
There's another question in the chat that really resonates with me. It says, how do you advocate for a topic to a legislator who does not agree with you, or do you abandon them to look to vote for a new person who has the same?
Right. 30 seconds. Give us the answer.
So I've had this scenario. I'm going through it right now. And my legislator is a friend of mine. Our kids go to school together. I have so much respect for her. I think she's a really smart person. But she and I disagree about some really fundamental foundations. And so it's important that I have civil dialogue with her. It's important that I approach her without anger, but I try to present facts. I try to help her see my perspective. But at the end of the day, I want better representation. So that's what I'm aiming for.
Excellent, thank you. And there are at least 2 more questions in this chat, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So I apologize. We've already run about 10 minutes over, and you guys can continue. I can't. I have to jump off here pretty soon. I want to thank you so much for being on here today. Please take a look at those chat questions in Facebook, the questions in the Facebook chat. And if you can't answer some of them, because I know people really want to know more about you, really want to know about what you're doing, how they can get involved with you and your causes, why don't we pop that information into the chat right now? Amber, how can someone get involved? Is there a website they can go to?
Well, I mean, if you're
Can
interested in
they?
membership with Civic Engagement
There we go.
Incorporated, we would love to have you. But no, I will definitely share my personal activism information, just if someone just wants to talk. We do, I want people to have a plan, but feel free to just be a sounding board. I'm more than happy to do that, to help get people in a direction. We did that 4 years ago with a group that I started called Rise, which was professional Black women who just wanted to know what they needed to know about being activists. And so you know, we started out with a discussion, we created our plan, like Nikki said, and then we took it and we did our own thing. So I'd be more than happy to share my information if someone just wants to find their voice.
Excellent. Nikki, what's the best way to get a hold of you? Is there a website that they can go to get in touch?
On Facebook, you can search for Olathe Public Education Network Open and hit like, and you can send a message. It will come to my inbox and we can start.
Thank you. And Erin.
I have a Facebook group called 6 Degrees of Activism, so they could search on that and might have to ask for an invite. I'm not quite sure how that works, but or send me a message.
But they'll get there.
Yes.
Eventually.
Yes.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much. This is normally, folks, where I do a plug for Mainstream and I ask you to go to the website, give us money because we do need to fund our canvases this summer. I guess I just did a plug inadvertently. Yeah. But what I'm asking you to do even more today is get in touch with these advocates, these activists, and see what you can do for them and what they can do for you, because it's very important that we all work together. So thank you everyone for being here with us today. Appreciate you. Stay safe and remember to do more than vote with all of us in 2020. Thank you.
Wear your mask and wash